We're here to bring real solutions to real problems affecting real people today. With your support, you can join us in becoming part of the solution and a part of this movement.
Context of, between novels, it's pretty easy to discern when someone's copied, potentially verbatim lines from one book to another. But in music, when you have things like chord progressions that historically have not been, eligible for copyright protection, I would say rightfully so, just because they're so fundamental, I think it's hard for people who, maybe aren't musicians to kind of draw parallels. Like, I think one thing that I read in my research for preparing for this film was that you should think of chord progressions similarly to kind of like narrative tropes, like boy meets girl, they fall in love, they get married. That's not copyright protectable between plays or books, and so similarly, auditory elements of songs like chord progressions that yield a similar sound that makes you think, oh, this is totally copied, they shouldn't be copyrightable either. So I don't really, I do not have an answer to your question.
I think that's an answer.
Nathaniel? So from kind of like filmmaker's perspective, I think a big part of this is obviously you have, like your film very well kind of laid out. There are a lot of legal avenues and lanes and kind of holes that you have to figure out and flesh out. But then there's the creative aspect. And I just, for example, for our film, I personally, I'm a huge sports documentary buff. I can watch any sports doc.
You heard about that Shaquille O'Neal doc?
Yeah.
Except Shaquille O'Neal, right?
Yes.
Oh, tell them that story.
So quickly, our original film title was Power Moves, and literally a week and a half ago, I was Googling, or I was searching on YouTube for our movie trailer and found a new trailer from an upstart athlete called Shaquille O'Neal on Netflix, also called Power Moves. So we had to quickly rename our doc, which is why it's The Power to Move. But yeah, so that was a fun surprise. But as we were making our doc, there were elements from other docs that I've, like The Last Dance, the doc about the Chicago Bulls. There's a doc on a group called Dude Perfect that was a 30 for 30 doc. Dozens of others that I could name that, when me and Emma, my co-director, were editing, we're kind of thinking of story arcs and things like that, we would pull on that and we would say okay, I want to use, this progression of archival footage or things like that. And so I think just from a creative standpoint, obviously, like you said, it's a fine and sometimes blurry line between mimicry and copying, but we absolutely took inspiration from other films, other docs, other styles. But in our doc, we have archival footage and we had to license that. We had to pay for that. So again, this isn't really an answer, but I think there is there's obviously the legal element, but then there's a creative element, and there's a big difference, I believe, between taking inspiration and, just straight up, I'm gonna duplicate this.
So there's something that we say in the org, because we actually utilize patents that are in the public domain. They were patented, and now they're in the public domain, and you cannot hold that patent. And that means unless you come up with something that is novel and patentable, you can't put a patent on it. Open hardware allows us to reverse engineer something that is in the public domain and reutilize it and upgrade it and release it as a design for the public to use. Interestingly, a lot of the components that we use that we buy off the rack are patented themselves and sold by other companies. And I want them to be prolific and continue those parts coming. So where open hardware comes in is that it allows us to solve a problem. It allows us to get around government regulation, it allows us to provide better wheelchairs, and in terms of creativity, right? Without the motors being sold and patented, we wouldn't be doing what we would be doing. So the reality is that there is room for both, and being completely anti-IP, which stymies some of the things that we need to do what we're doing. And I do want to point out that Shaquille O'Neal's documentary was about shoes.
It was very different. I think that's an important point. You have to make a profit or else you can't make the product, but you can make the designs available, and I think this is what Elon Musk has done. He wants to promote the kind of cars that he makes, so he wants to let other people make them in their own way, but he's still selling his own at a profit. And I think that's what you're doing with your wheelchairs as well. When you're a singer or a writer, it's a little different because you can only sell this thing. You can sell the books, but you're not redoing
If I may,
design.
we want you to sell them. We're creating designs for businesses that already exist to utilize. We intend to use an open hardware license that's reciprocal. That means if you want to build our designs for profit, you give us a little bit of money, nowhere near the overhead that it would take to create the design, so that we can create more designs, because there's a lot of equipment out there to go after and reproduce in an open hardware manner. Interestingly, I want to point out that we do have the former IP team of Xerox advising us and telling us what we can and cannot reverse engineer and utilize to move forward. And with the state of technology moving forward, motors, batteries, tires, so many of these parts are off the rack from other industries. These are dirt bike tires on the front of this right now. The batteries are LifePo 4, very safe lithium, iron-based. There is no reason why we can't utilize both at once.
You can make a profit and you can share the ideas, which
Yes.
I think is great. Go ahead, Nathan.
I was just real quick, and I think an important element of this conversation, again, which I think was very well laid out in your doc, is I do think there's a very important distinction between commerce and commercial elements. Like Thomas was saying, these are physical things, these are things that people need to live their lives. And, he's hoping people use their designs, build the chairs they need for themselves, or sell them, and, if they do make money, give a little bit for that, what they have built at MIF. But there is an important distinction between that, I believe, and something that is art. And that's where, again, like this doc laid out, these are songs, and we heard of it. Is melody important? Are bass lines important? Are lyrics important? Those are fuzzy lines, and there's no clear distinction. It's harder a lot of times to distinguish with a piece of art, whether it's a song, whether it's a film, whether it's a painting. What's inspiration? What's copying? What's a little bit of both? And I think it might be a little easier with something commercial, because again, if something's a design, it's easy to see if that's the design. If something's a piece of art, what's inspiration? What's a copy?
Thank you very much. And I think in many ways that's kind of the building blocks that Alexa was talking about. You have the design, which is the building blocks, and then the deliverance. We could continue with this conversation for so long, but we do have another movie to do. Did you want to make, so we have time for one more comment? Seems like, yeah, go ahead. You have the mic, yeah, go ahead.
But one of the things I wanted to mention is I work in a different field than art. I work mostly in the repair field, where we have to figure out how devices work in order to fix them. And one area where we have been somewhat screwed with intellectual property laws is if you go to the progressive side, we should make laws for consumer protection, ask a company to provide us with what we need to fix things. That doesn't work. However, when you go over to the libertarian side of it, we wind up getting screwed at both ends. There are certain laws in the books, like Section 1201 of the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, that says it is illegal to break a digital clock in something that somebody has bought and paid for, even if that is outside of the patent window. So let's say a patent lasts for 20 years. It's been 22 years. If you break a digital lock inside of something like an Xbox, so that you could play a video game on it that was old and or you want to use it as a movie play, the person who made that available can go to prison for up to 5 years for it. And if somebody shares a schematic drawing that says how a device is put together, that is considered copyrightable, trade secret. Whereas if somebody were to make a recipe is not something that you can patent. You can't copyright a recipe, but you can copyright a schematic, which is essentially the same thing. It's a list of ingredients and the order in which you put them together. So for our particular industry, intellectual property law has done a lot to stimulate innovation in this way, and like it's gone beyond protecting authorship, which is Apple made this, you made this song, you made this movie, onto we kind of own this after you bought and paid for it by being able to control what you do.
If I may, just
I
one
guess,
more.
and go and tell us what just showed up. If you could pass the microphone on. I apologize, we have one handheld mic today.
I'd like to introduce Daniel Chaves. Daniel won our competition at Arizona State University to create a open source children's wheelchair. Very specific reason for this. Through our current healthcare systems, the #1 metric for justifying a medically deemed necessary power wheelchair for a child aged 3 to 7 that is in that developmental period with their brain. They need to explore, learn, go bump, experience dog poop in the lawn, right? The #1 metric is to put them in a power wheelchair, a 3-year-old in a power wheelchair for the first time, and see how well they drive it. Did anybody learn to drive before they took the driver's test? They have the highest rate of denial. That compounds their disability. That compounds their physical disability, behavioral disability, social disability, you name it. That gives the ability to thrive a blockade. Imagine not even having the opportunity to develop the way you should be able to. And I want to ask Daniel, what's your specific inspiration to join us?
Thank you. It's a pleasure for me to be here. Well, I'm a medical doctor from Quito, Ecuador. I don't have any engineering background. Just to begin with, the design that you see here, we were tasked with a mission to make a wheelchair under $500, and we were trying to make something that was going to be useful. So I worked in the Andes regions, and I worked in South America and in Europe, and I've seen how like what Thomas mentioned, like the development, like the neurological development of a child, completely varies from how they were stimulated, they were stimulated when they were a child. So just think about from the people here, the people when some of you have traveled to other countries in South America, maybe, or in Africa. Think of how many kids you saw outside in a wheelchair. Probably none. What we heard today about kids being enclosed and trapped in their rooms is still happening around the world. But here in the developing countries, we see that it's still a work in progress, like Thomas said, but we're still far from where we can reach. So we're here, what we try to do is have the same functionality as a $5,000 wheelchair that probably in a month the kid is going to outgrow it, and we made it for $350, just using a ratchet from Amazon, like a booster seat from Amazon, a little go-kart from Walmart, and an electric ratchet to make it able to lift and go down with a lap jack. So what you can see here is like that $350 can change the life and the neurological development and the future of a child. So this is something that is definitely groundbreaking, and something that should be adopted, just using and repurposing technology for the people that need it the most. Thank you so much.
Thank you all so much. We need to move on to the next film, but this is just wonderful. Thank you. Congratulations to all of you with what you have accomplished.